Under the pouring rain at 1 a.m. in Hanoi, Minh, 27, rode his motorbike through the empty streets. He was a ride-hailing driver, his jacket soaked with water from the road, his eyes heavy after a long day of driving nearly 10 times. The cold wind blew. He just wanted to go home, sleep to forget the fatigue. When turning into the road near Nhat Tan Bridge, a terrifying bang rang out. A black SUV lost control, crashed into an electric pole. The front of the car was crushed, smoke billowed. Minh stopped the car, his heart clenched. None of your business, he told himself, but then a weak cry from inside the car made him unable to stand still. Without thinking further, he rushed forward, jerked the stuck car door open, and pulled the young girl covered in blood out just before the fire broke out fiercely. The fire engulfed the SUV. A small explosion scattered glass everywhere. Minh held the girl in his arms, her breathing weak but alive. The ambulance arrived, the paramedics took her away. The police asked a few questions. Minh nodded, told a brief story, then quietly left in the rain, not leaving his name, only feeling his heart beating wildly because he had just escaped the line between life and death. 3 years passed. Minh no longer drove a motorbike taxi. He worked as a waiter at the luxurious The Diamond restaurant in the center of Hanoi. Life was regular, adjusting the collar of his uniform, serving VIP guests, going home, sleeping, repeating. His eyes were deep but empty, no longer the impetuosity of youth, just a 27-year-old man living without a goal. One night, the restaurant door opened. A woman in a white suit walked in, with a strong aura. Minh paused. She was the person he saved years ago, but she didn't recognize him, or pretended not to recognize him. He served her like a regular customer, but when she left, an envelope was left with the words, "Do you think I don't remember?" making his heart cold. She knew who he was. Lin, the girl, met Minh again later. She revealed herself as Con Hen Lin, the daughter of the chairman of Hai Dang Group, and gave him a large check to repay her. Minh looked at the amount of money, enough to last a lifetime, but he pushed it towards her. "I didn't save you for money," he said, his eyes determined. Lin was surprised, but didn't press her. Lin invited Minh to a luxurious high-rise building owned by her corporation, offering him a good job to escape his life as a waiter. "You went to college, you deserve better than this," she said. But Minh refused. He didn't want to leave his comfort zone, even though he didn't know what he was living for. Lin looked deeply into Minh's eyes. "You should be a firefighter. You once rushed into the fire to save me without fear, without needing fame. That's who you really are." Those words planted a seed in his mind. Minh laughed dryly, thinking it was a crazy idea, but it kept smoldering in his mind, making him wonder, what am I living for? Minh went to the fire training center. The first days were hell, running 5Ts with an oxygen tank, climbing rope ladders, breaking down doors in thick fake smoke. His body ached, but he didn't give up. The first time he stepped into a simulated fire, saving a mannequin, he felt another fire burning inside him. The fire of meaning. One night, the alarm rang. Huangmin apartment building was on fire, and an old woman and a baby were trapped on the 6th floor. Minh rushed through the black smoke and fire, picked up the baby, supported the old woman, jumped onto the air mattress as the ceiling collapsed behind him. When the old woman opened her eyes to thank him, he knew he had found his true path. Saving people was not a job, but a mission. Lin still kept in touch with Minh, asking about the fires, encouraging him. She went to London to study for a year, and when she returned, she texted, "I'm back." Minh smiled, replied, "Welcome back." He didn't know since when Lin's presence had become an indispensable part, like a silent companion. Minh is now a real firefighter, standing in an orange uniform looking at Hanoi at night. He is no longer lost. After a year of rushing into the fire, saving people, he understood that he lived for courage and perseverance. Lin entered his life as a turning point, and now, when she returned, he knew he was no longer alone. The road ahead was clear, not only because of the fire, but because of the meaning he had found. Minh entered the coffee shop by the West Lake at exactly 7 p.m., the pale yellow light shining on the calm lake. Lin was sitting there, in a pale blue dress, no longer the powerful look of a corporation's young lady, but more gentle, more approachable. "You haven't changed much," she said, her eyes sweeping over his simple shirt. Minh smiled lightly, sat down. "You have. Has London changed you?" Lin sipped her tea, smiled faintly. "Maybe more mature." "And you, a real firefighter, how do you feel?" Minh looked out at the lake, answered slowly, like finding yourself. The conversation dragged on, not rushed, but both of them felt an invisible change, as if the distance of a year had brought them closer. In the middle of the story, Lin suddenly put down her teacup, looked straight at Minh. "I have a project. I want you to join." He frowned. "What project?" She tilted her head, her voice low. "A charity program, building fire prevention awareness for remote areas. You are a firefighter. You understand fire better than anyone." Minh paused, not expecting Lin to drag him into such a big thing. "I'm not good at speaking in front of a crowd," he replied. Lin smiled lightly. "You don't need to say anything. Just do it. Come with me, okay?" He looked into her eyes, saw the familiar determination, and nodded. "Okay." A few days later, Minh and Lin arrived at a poor village more than 100 km from Hanoi. This place had been hit by a big fire 2 years ago. Many wooden houses were burned down, leaving scars on the ground. Standing in the middle of the field, the lingering smell of burning, Minh suddenly remembered the rainy night 3 years ago, the burning SUV, the faint cry for help, and the moment he ran into the fire. Lin walked up to him, her voice low. "Are you okay?" He nodded, but his heart was heavy. "Looking at this place, I wonder if there was someone like me back then. Would things be different?" Lin put her hand on his shoulder. "That's why we're here, so that no one else has to go through that." They got to work, instructing the villagers on how to put out the fire, distributing simple firefighting equipment. Minh realized that saving lives wasn't just about running into the fire, but also about preventing it from spreading. During their days in the village, Minh and Lin worked side by side. He taught the children how to use fire extinguishers, while Lin took notes and chatted with the villagers. One evening, they sat by a small fire. Lin told them about London, about the pressure of inheriting the group, and Minh shared the times he almost died in fires. "Aren't you afraid?" she asked. He shook his head. "Scared, but I can't turn my back." Lin looked at him for a long time, her eyes soft. "You are special, Minh." He laughed dryly, not answering, but his heart felt warm. They didn't talk much, but the silent understanding between them grew, like an invisible thread that no one was in a hurry to name. A week after returning to Hanoi, Captain Hai called Minh into his office. "You have been proposed to be the deputy captain of the rescue team," he said, his voice stern. "But you will have to focus full time on the station. And you can't participate in outside projects anymore." Lin was silent. Being a deputy captain is every firefighter's dream. Command, more responsibility, but it also means leaving the project with Lin. That night, he texted her. "I have a chance to advance, but I have to stop working with you." Lin replied briefly, "You choose. I won't force you." He sat in his room, looking at his orange uniform, his heart in turmoil. He wanted both, but life wasn't that easy. After a sleepless night, Minh went to see Lin at the old coffee shop. "I'm staying with the project," he said, his voice firm. Lin raised her eyebrows. "What's wrong? Isn't deputy captain your dream?" He sighed. "Yes, but I realize that saving people is not just putting out fires. What we do in the village, it stops fires before they happen. I want to continue." Lin looked at him, the corners of her lips curling up. "You really don't always choose the harder thing?" He chuckled. "Maybe because I met someone who reminded me to do so." They looked at each other, saying nothing more, but both knew they had chosen a common path not only for the mission, but for each other. The following month, Minh and Lin continued the project, going to more remote areas, bringing equipment, knowledge, and hope. Minh was still a firefighter, still rushing into the fire when needed, but he no longer just fought the fire in front of him, but he felt confident and he fought to keep it from ever flaring up. Lin, with her sharpness and determination, became the organizer, the connector, but also the companion who never left Minh's side. One evening, as they stood looking at a new village equipped with fire extinguishers, Lin asked, "Where do you think we will go?" Minh looked at her, his eyes shining. "Anywhere, as long as there are people in need." She smiled, did not answer, but her hand gently touched his. Their journey was not over, and ahead were still open roads, where courage and perseverance continued to write the story of the two. One early winter morning, Minh and Lin received an email from an international fire prevention organization. Their charity project in villages had made a splash, and the organization wanted to work together to build an early fire warning system for dozens of rural areas in Vietnam. In a small conference room at the fire station, Lin presented the plan with shining eyes. "This is an opportunity for us to do something bigger, Minh." He nodded, though he was a little overwhelmed. Bigger means harder, but I agree. They got to work, doing surveys, holding meetings, and for the first time, Minh felt that his mission was far beyond the fires he had faced. Just a few weeks later, an article appeared online, "Firefighter Hero, from Unknown to Icon of Courage." The article recounted Minh's rescue of Lin 3 years ago, his journey to becoming a firefighter, and the project with her. Images of him in his orange uniform went viral. Minh finished reading, threw the phone on the table. His face darkened. "I don't want this." Lin sat next to him, put her hand on his shoulder. "You can't avoid it. People need a role model like you." He shook his head. "I save people because I want to, not to be in the newspaper." But the pressure from the attention forced him to face the anonymous past he had chosen now. He could no longer hide. At the same time, Lin received a call from her father, the chairman of Hai Dang Group. "It's time for you to take over," he said coldly over the phone. Lin was silent, her hands clasping her coffee cup. That night, she told him, "They want me to quit the project and come back to being the group's daughter." He looked at her and asked, "What do you want?" Lin sighed. "I want to be here, with you, with what we're doing, but the family doesn't let go easily." Conflict flared up inside her, and Minh felt the distance between them growing. "If you leave, I won't blame you," he said, but his voice was low, as if he didn't want that to happen. One night, at the end of the month, the alarm bells blared loudly at the fire station. A forest fire near Ho Bin Village, at risk of spreading to the residential area, Captain Hai shouted over the walkie-talkie. Minh put on protective gear and led the group to the fire truck. When they arrived, the scene was like hell. Red flames engulfed the pine forest, thick black smoke covered the sky. Minh commanded the team, divided into groups, to put out the fire and evacuate the villagers. He shouted in the whistling wind, "Prioritize getting people out first." In the rear, Lin coordinated with the international organization, dispatching water trucks and equipment. This was the biggest fire Minh had ever faced, and for the first time, he felt that the fire not only challenged his physical strength, but also his spirit. In the middle of the fire, a loud bang rang out when the gas tank in the house near the forest exploded. Minh was thrown, fell to the ground, flames licking around his body. He tried to get up, but the smoke suffocated him. He passed out, woke up in the ambulance, an oxygen mask on his face. Lin appeared beside him, eyes red, holding his hand tightly. "You scared me to death," Minh smiled weakly. "I'm not dead yet." For the first time, she did not hide her emotions, and he realized that she was more important to him than he had thought. After the fire, Lin returned home to see her father. "I will not take over the corporation," she said, her voice firm. He was angry. "You left your whole family for a fireman?" Lin shook her head. "No, I chose my path, a meaningful life." She left without looking back. That night, she went to the fire station, stood before Minh. "I stayed, not for you, but for myself." He looked at her, his eyes warm. "But I am glad you are here." They did not say much, but Lin's decision seemed to erase the last boundary between them. The following month, Minh and Lin continued the project. Early warning systems were installed in many villages, reducing the risk of fire. Minh was still a firefighter, but he no longer just ran into the flames. He built shields to protect others. Lin became the project manager, astute and dedicated, but also the one who was always by Min's side after each shift. One afternoon, standing on a hill overlooking the newly saved village, Lin asked, "What do you think we should do next?" Minh turned and took her hand. "Just go, you'll see." She smiled, squeezing his hand gently. They were not just colleagues, not just friends. They were two pieces of a larger life, together writing a story of courage, sacrifice, and hope. After 2 years of hard work, Minh and Lin stood on a hill overlooking the last village in the project. Minh flew the DY M42s, the DS, and 61 MVs. The early warning signs glittered in the sunset, and the loudspeaker system blared fire prevention instructions. That day, the representative of the international organization came and presented them with a certificate of merit in recognition of outstanding contributions to protecting the community. The villagers held a small ceremony. Children ran around Minh, calling him firefighter, and the elders held Lin's hand in gratitude. Minh turned to her, smiling. "We did it." Lin nodded, her eyes sparkling. "More than I thought." This success was not only a reward for their efforts, but also a testament to the path they had chosen. That evening, after the ceremony, Minh and Lin sat by the West Lake, where they had met again after many incidents. The wind blew gently, the lights reflected on the water. Minh took a deep breath, holding her hand. "Lenin, I'm not good at talking about these things, but you are the most important person to me. Not only because of the project, but because of you." Lin paused, looked at him, then smiled gently. "You're really slow. I've been waiting for this for a long time." She leaned over, resting her head on his shoulder. "Me too, Minh. You are the reason I stay." They sat there, not needing any more words, just the warmth of each other to understand that from now on, they were not just companions, but a part of each other. A few days later, Lin decided to visit her father one last time to clarify her choice. In the luxurious room of Haidang Group, she stood before him, her voice calm. "I will not come back, but I am still your daughter. I just want to live my own way." He looked at her, silent for a long time, then sighed. "I used to think you abandoned your family, but I was wrong. I am proud that you found your own path." He walked over, hugged her, the first hug after many years of separation. Lin shed tears, feeling relieved. When she left, she called Minh. Dad agreed. He smiled over the phone. "So you are completely free." A year later, in a small house on the outskirts of Hanoi, Minh and Lin held a simple wedding ceremony. Min's fellow firefighters in orange uniforms filled the yard, and villagers who had helped them brought flowers to congratulate them. Lin, in a simple white dress, held Min's hand and whispered, "Are you sure? Marrying me means living with a bunch of plants." He laughed loudly. "I'm used to it." They entered a new life, both as husband and wife, and as silent heroes. Minh remained a firefighter, Lin continued to run the fire prevention project, and every night they returned to each other, telling stories stories about fire, about people, about love. Many years later, when their hair had turned gray, the house was still filled with the laughter of their children, and outside, the villages were still safe thanks to their mark. Minh and Lin had gone from lost people, a tired motorbike taxi driver and a restrained young lady, to a couple who not only found love, but also built a meaningful legacy. They not only saved people from the fire, but also lit up hope for thousands of lives. Their small house is a testament to their courage, perseverance, and love, overcoming all challenges. Under the sky of Hanoi, they lived happily ever after, not only with each other, but with the eternal mission they had written together. A perfect ending where love and ideals blend, leaving light for future generations. Dear ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. Through this story, we hope that each of us realizes the value of courage, perseverance, and the meaning of helping others. Life always has unexpected turns, but as long as we keep trying, we will definitely find our own path. To support our channel, you just need to click like to leave a comment, to share your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel so as not to miss the next meaningful stories. Once again, we sincerely thank you and wish you good health and peace, and always walk firmly on your own journey.